You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Oh yes, my friends, the North-South Maple Leafs have arrived. It's Nick Alberga, Jay Rosehill, the Thursday edition of Leafs Morning Take. It's October 17th. What's going on, Rosie?
Nicky Bobby with the bucket on. Were the people in the chat getting to your feelers yesterday or what?
I got bullied so hard that I had to wear my Muzzy hat today. No, it's for good luck. It's for good luck.
I like it. And some touches to the set too. Are those your middies? Are those the middies you used in 2002 or what?
Those are old school missions from
leathers.
I think when I was 13 years old, but they made the cut for the background.
Man, breaking in new gloves back in the day was terrible. Nowadays, towards the end of my career too, you could put on new ones and be like, oh my gosh, these feel just fine. But forever, trying to break in gloves was the worst thing in the world. And if you got called up to the show and you were nervous already and wanted to feel good, and then you got new pants which were stiff as hell, new gloves which you could barely even, if your stick fell on the ground to go pick it up, you wouldn't even be able to do it. It was awful, man. But those remind me of them back there.
How would you rate your style in your playing day?
Philly was pretty good. I had the right bucket. Toronto, I had some bad helmets, the Bauer 4000 and even the CCMer earlier on. So it got better as time went on, but it's hard to beat that CCM bucket I was wearing in Philly. But yeah, some questionable choices upstairs in Toronto. So overall, pretty average.
Man, we've been seeing a lot of retro equipment. Like we talked about Austin Matthews and the new tax skates. I was talking about maybe bringing back the Vapor 10s. Do you think they'd ever bring back that Jofa bucket? I think you'd look good in that back in the day.
I was watching some things on YouTube, and Dirk Graham, who was my very first coach in professional hockey in Springfield, and he was the captain for the Blackhawks, and he had that old Jofa on, and it was getting kind of late for guys to be wearing that, I think. But everyone on the Oilers had to wear that Jofa. If you came there, they basically said you're wearing this. And nowadays, there's not a chance, because if you've ever held one of those in your hands, you might as well not even be wearing one.
It looked like people were Neil Armstrong on the ice, though. It's got that astronaut look to it, doesn't it?
I think Gretzky looked unbelievable and it looked sick, but not everyone could pull it off. Sometimes it looks a little goofy, and if you see some guy in beer league rocking it now, it's kind of hilarious that that's what they wore. But nowadays, with head trauma and concussions and whatnot, there's not a chance they're going backwards.
You're right. Did Craig Berube not have a stint with the Jofa bucket? I think we got to do some research on that. It might have been Bellows back in the day, but something tells me I think Chief rocked the Jofa for a bit. We got to find background on that, though.
I could see that, man. I remember when he had that long hair that covered his name bar, basically. That was some. Him and Chris Simon remind me of the guys with the longest hair, the scrappers, where you could barely read their name bar. Kind of a badass attitude look to it. But yeah, we'll have to check if you wore that Jofa or not.
Rosie, I love this guy. I know we're 4 games into the tenure of Craig Berube behind the bench, but how many times in recent memory do we see the Leafs just curb stomping a team? It went awry a bit in the third period, and the coach just let them play. Berube's going to hold these guys accountable. It's 5-2, 11 minutes left. He calls a timeout, chews out the team. I love that.
I do too, man. I mean, the Leafs have in the past had a tendency to just not have that killer instinct, to not have the character to snuff a team out, and they would let them back in the mix. They would blow leads. They would get stomped by far inferior teams, and it's just not a good identity to have, and it's not conducive to winning championships or doing well in the playoffs or having any of that character to be able to get you through adversity. And I think that's well known with Craig Berube, and he won't stand for it. And the first time this season that he felt that inclination of that starting to take hold again, snuffed it out, tore him a strip, woke everyone up. It's not acceptable. I don't care what the score is. Don't care how much time is left on the clock. We play a certain way, and it does not bloody matter what's going on with the clock or the scoreboard. There's an expectation of how that team's supposed to play, and I think that's leadership, that's coaching, that's what you're trying to ingrain in this team, and it's wicked that they're doing it this early in the season.
As evident by last year's postseason, you got to be careful when you try to lip read, but reading in between the lines of the strip that was torn off the bench following the 5-2 goal. Let's go to work. gain the offensive zone and go to fucking work. Let's wake the fuck up.
Whoa,
Courtesy Craig Berube.
two F's in the morning, Nick. That's
Well,
not
that was the quote.
where you can say F. You can say F, and then the
Well,
kids
no,
don't
that's
have
the
to.
quote. I'm reading the quote.
Kids don't have to learn all those words. No,
Sounds
it
like
was
we cater to children on this podcast.
yeah, it's good, man. I mean, like I said, there's an expectation, and they're not adhering to it. You're going to hear about it, and as it should be. And there, in the past, that's what should have been said. In the past, that's what should have been the mentality on the bench. And the players sometimes, I mean, we've talked about it in the past when they kind of have that dumbfounded look on their face and there's no emotion going on and the game's slipping away and they're getting pummeled and they're giving away their lead. And it's just like, get some bloody emotion. Like, I feel like screaming at that. I'm sure we've all screamed that at the TV in years past. And it looks to be like that's not going to be tolerated and that needs to be taken out of their game and their identity. And it's an absolutely positive thing. You need those teams. This team's good enough to start doing something. Now's the frickin' time, and it's time to stop pissing around with these elementary type of mistakes and nights and no more. Like, you're too good for that. And it's time to get this team up onto the mountaintop where they know who they are. They can close out games. They can destroy teams. They can claw back into games. Whatever the situation is, they can be prepared to do it. And it comes from inside and having everyone with the right mindset and having that character that'll get you through that kind of thing. And looks like Chiefs on board with that as well, which I think is just bloody awesome. It just kind of reiterates what we thought when they hired the guy.
Jason M writes in, why does Rosie always chew Nick out for swearing, but when Rosie swears nothing? Quite frankly, I'm scared of the guy. He kicked ass for a living. I don't want to talk back to Jay Rosehill, so that's why.
Because I'm selfish. Yeah, I think you got to reserve them for where you really want to bring your point home. That's why.
All right. If you're going to say that, go back to your infamous 100,000 view rant back in the springtime where every third word was a swear bomb.
That was bringing home a point.
Yeah.
Clearly.
You hammered it all right. Maxentius Decimus, thank you so much for the super chat. Too early to be happy. As a Leafs fan, I'm scarred. I feel they're right with you, but there's reason to be optimistic and positive right now, Rosie.
Yeah, hey, I get it. There's scar tissue, and Leafs fans get ridiculed for being too high at the good times and being too low at the bad times, and a little bit of consistency is just fine. But we got a show to do, and we got to break down all the details every single day. So, yes, it's early. No, they're not on the mountaintop yet, but I think that the problems that they've had in the past are being addressed right now. And, we talk, Austin Matthews made this record, and then he's catching Daryl. I could care less about any of that. Are they losing to San Jose? Are they blowing leads in the third period? Are they stuck in the mud when they need a goal? Do they have any of that team, Florida Panthers type of instinct? And that's the stuff I care about. And I think that's the stuff that the rest of Leafs Nation and the fans of this team care about as well. So the fact they're addressing those little things that just irk people is showing that they're on the right track. And yeah, it's early and you got scar tissue. That's fine. But I like what I saw last night, even though they spun their wheels a little bit in the third period. They got the job done and then some. I mean, we're a 6-2 win. Sorry, there's not a lot of negatives to look at. I don't care how you spin it.
JS with an astute proclamation in the chat. Rosie could definitely kick Nick's ass. Good one.
You're bigger than we thought, remember?
Yeah, still, dude. You fought for a living. Dude, it wouldn't even be close. I've been in one fight in my life, and I was fighting for my actual life.
How'd that go?
Some Serbian dudes had knives. I had nothing else to give, but just a couple punches.
You cruised over to Scarborough for
no, man. This happened at Fanshawe College when I was like 19 years old. These random guys, they were bombed. They jumped one of my best friends at the time, and I had to step in, even though they were my neighbors. But they were crazy Serbians. Okay,
that doesn't sound very fun. I'm glad you got out of that, Nicky. But no scrapping between us anytime soon.
Moral of the story: Rosie can certainly kick my ass. Anyways, speaking of ass kicking, we got Mike Keenan on today's podcast, Rosie.
Yeah, he's done some ass kicking in his day, I imagine. Intense man. I was on YouTube last night looking up some stuff about him, and it's an old school coach that did play the mind games and did try to, work psychologically to get a group together through different means of operating. And I don't think a lot of kids in today's age could hack that for more than a day. And there's some Hall of Famers and some legends and some all stars that had to deal with it as well. And he was not picking and choosing who he was hard on. And that was his style of coaching, and that's how it was done back in the day. So it'd be fun to pick his brain a little bit about the past. And he's got a book coming out, and man, he's done a lot of coaching for a lot of decades.
Iron Mike, My Life Behind the Bench, his new memoir coming out. So Mike Keenan's coming up in about 20 minutes from now. Again, get those super chats in at the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. Prime Monday Night Hockey on Prime Video is here, the exclusive home for the NHL on Monday nights in Canada. The next game coming up on Monday, the Leafs hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning. Fans can watch Prime Monday Night Hockey on Prime Video at no added cost through their membership by navigating to the sports section of the app, where the broadcast will be prominently featured. Prime Monday Night Hockey, it's on Monday. It's on Prime. A 6-2 victory for the Maple Leafs against the Los Angeles Kings. The first two periods, Rosie, I thought they were outstanding. I thought the top line was great. A nice, solid team effort to get the 2 points.
Well, team effort for sure. I mean, Stoley's playing solid again, man. He looks sharp. He just instills confidence every game he plays so far. D were moving it around and getting the puck up there, keeping it to the outside, doing their thing, and then the scoring was spread out so nice. I mean, like when Austin Matthews has a hat trick and an apple, and Mitch has 4 apples, and Willie does his thing, it's like, yeah, that's awesome, but like, yeah, that's just not how you're going to win games in the playoffs. And last night they're spreading it out so much. I mean, Bobby McMahon steps up big. You get scoring from the defense. It was kind of all over the place, which is, I think, a really good sign. When you think of those playoffs and those goals that get scored, you never know who they're going to come from, and you need them to come from, all different lines and throughout the depth of your roster. So that's another positive about last night. Power play got on the board. Austin got on the board. It looks like they're moving and shaking a little bit here right now. 3-game winning streak. Nothing to complain about, really.
A lot of positives, certainly to grab from that game. I like the way they starting on time. And you talked about Austin Matthews, right? Like that was a focus going into this game for sure. I mean, any other player, 3 games, you don't score, you don't bat an eye, but it's Austin Matthews. You expect this guy to score every night. He scores. I love how he fans in the first attempt, then goes roof daddy. Like what a way to score your first of the season, eh?
Yeah, he gathers it so fast and just rips it. His release is just silly. I see these guys do this stuff these days, and I'm just like, what are those sticks and what puck are they using? Like, it doesn't make sense. It does not seem like it's got the weight to it than the one that I played with, but clearly different caliber, talent level of players. But yeah, he's had his chances, and they showed it on the feed, him having his scoring chances, and then it took kind of a weird one where he fanned on it there, but golly, does he rip it. And yeah, I mean, what was it, 3 games he didn't score in? Come on. Not a huge deal. Yeah, you expect him to get on the board, but a matter of time with that guy. And I right before the game matched him to score, to be honest, and it was first period that he nailed it. I was kind of happy I jumped on that one, but yeah, it's matter of time before that guy gets on the board, and plenty more to come.
I always laugh seeing the response from goaltenders when they get sniped by Austin Matthews. Like David Riddick still hasn't moved. Like he shot that puck so hard through traffic where the goalie didn't even see it. Like it just shows you how remarkable this guy truly is. And the numbers as well speak for themselves. 200 career goals on home ice. Of course, 2 outdoors at BMO. We call it home ice nonetheless. That's elite company. Joining Matt Sundin, Daryl Sittler, Dave Keon. Obviously, we've run out of superlatives to describe Austin Matthews, but when this guy's playing with confidence in general, Rosie, I thought that top line, which is so dynamic. Mitch Marner had his best game of the season, and your guy Matthew Nyes continues to impress too.
Yeah, he does, man. Too high. Like, I mean, it's not outrageous to say that he could beat all those guys this year and get, what is it, 30 more to
Yeah.
to get on the board with Sittler there. I mean, it'd be tough. He'd have to score a lot more at home and have a huge season again, but it's just nuts. I remember his first game where he put up 4, and that doesn't seem very long ago. And now he's done it 200 times. just at home. He's a goal scoring machine, man. I just don't even know what it would be like to score that many goals at that clip that consistently. It's impressive. We're happy to have him. Looking forward to him. You know, I know he's not a young guy necessarily, but like you're always developing and maturing and seeing what he becomes as the season goes on with that C on his shoulder. It's kind of like officially the Austin Matthews era, and I'd love to see like all parts of his game develop, including his leadership and his ability to take that team on his back and say, "I'll show you the way, follow me," and get through some tough times and win some playoff games and be that guy, that real guy that leads that team to hopefully something special.
What's been your read on the first 4 games? I talked about North South hockey, excuse me, off the top of the program, and I really feel that way. Like it's looked like a different Leafs team where it feels like they're being way more simplistic. You're still seeing a bit of dangling, but not as much. They're just doing their thing, very very straightforward, and it feels more of like a grinding style that I think brings you success in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like for me, they're closer to the Florida Panthers than they are Sheldon Keefe's Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I mean, early to say, but there is a feeling of, it looks like just depth, like layers, like whether you're talking, like there's a lot of holes that are plugged from the past. I mean, the goaltending situation looks pretty good, and we haven't even had our quote unquote number one play yet. The D looked pretty solid and capable for a plethora of different reasons. The depth scoring is there. Energy lines are there. We've got a bit of toughness. We're not backing down. We're not getting intimidated. No one thinks they're going to run us out of the building anymore. Our skill speaks for itself. You've got some power forward in there. It's a lot of bases are covered, and when they come out, it just looks solid. Before you'd watch them and it was loopy, shooty. Let me try this backhand sauce to this little area spot and see if the guy can skate onto it and just BS like that. They've kind of abandoned that to a degree. I mean, these skill players, when they get opportunity, are still going to be creative and are still going to use their talent to their advantage. I don't think anyone's trying to take that away from them, and I don't think they would say that that's being done either. But it just, yeah, it looks like when there's an opportunity, that this chip off the wall behind the D man is what's going to get it done. Because I know Matthew Nyes is busting down the middle to go get that. Where before it might be a little pull up and a little rink wide rip, and then turnover, and that just grinds you down. That just sucks momentum. That just creates groaning on the bench. And if they get away from that and start playing that north south hockey like the Florida Panthers do, and everyone's on board and they still have the skill to finish all the time, and they're getting points and plays from all throughout the lineup, and their D can shut it down, and you have a goalie that can make the big save. Like, look out, man. That's what they've been trying to build for years, and they've probably been too reliant on just getting these hyper skilled guys in. And now watch, we're going to win. And that doesn't win championships. Teams put together that check a lot of boxes, work their bags off, and are committed to the system and to the team first mentality, that wins every single time. And I know it's early, but you're starting to see that out of the Leafs. And that's a good feeling right now. It's, again, I'm not committing to anything. I'm not predicting anything, but the things they're doing appears to be headed in the right direction for what everyone's wanted for a long time.
Max sends another super chat. Do you think Holmberg makes the playoff lineup? Max, way too early. There's 78 games remaining in this season. I, for one, still think they're showcasing a couple different players on the trade market. We know Calle Yarncroke is out. We know Yanni Hakanpää is out. This lineup could look a lot different. I think the one thing this team will chase between now and the trade deadline is a center, whether it's a second line center or a third line center. I think they're going to look to achieve that. Ask me right now which he is. I'm going to say Holmberg is not on the game one roster.
Yeah, I would probably agree, and things could change. But Bobby McMahon didn't exactly create a lot of waves in camp and in preseason, and look at him now, away he goes, and he's producing right now, having a flash of good play, and if he continues that up, he'll be a staple there. Nick Robertson did have a big camp, did have a big preseason. Since then, I question, has he even been playing? I don't see a whole lot out of him, and probably to his frustration. And again, we talked about it beforehand. You got to continue to produce if you're going to be, in that lineup. And yeah, they're going to be over the cap when they activate some guys. Some guys need to be moved around. I'm sure Tree Living is pretty consistently on the phone, being in guys' ears. Hey, what do you think about this? Yes, I know we talked about this. I'm circling back, trying to press a little bit to see if he can move some guys around, because that's the reality of the business. And yeah, I don't know who's going to be there and who's not, but Pat Chiaretti getting scratched last night, not something I really had on my bingo card. But when you think about it for a second longer, it makes sense. The guy, let's take it easy. It's October. He doesn't need to play 82 games. We need him down the stretch. He's a little bit older. He's had some injuries. I'm sure they weren't, too concerned with taking him out because of the things I just mentioned. You got to get some guys playing, get them showcased, get them seen, see if there's some interest out there throughout the league.
Yeah, initially I was a little rattled by Max Pacioretty being a health bomb, but to your point, I understand, and especially at his age, what he's been through the last couple of years, to give him a week off, like I would assume he'll be back in there against the New York Rangers coming up on Saturday night, a light 2-game week. They got a busy slate next week, and I mentioned it. They're showcasing some guys. Like I know people love Nick Robertson. I think he's a guy who's firmly out there in the trade market right now. I think the Leafs are open to a couple different things. Maybe Holmberg's name's out there, maybe Kampf, maybe Yarncroke. I think they're willing to get creative. And the more and more I watch Nick Robertson not to open up that can of worms, he is better served to be in the bottom six than in the top six, than being a bottom six grinder. Plain and simple to me, Rosie.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he can do his thing there. He's suited to, score goals, make plays, and it's just too hard to do with those minutes, playing with those players, with those expectations. Every line kind of has a role and an expectation of what you're doing with your minutes, and what he's getting isn't, too conducive to what he's capable of. And it always reminds me of a guy that, one of the best players in the American Hockey League, and puts up points like crazy and is leading the league and is a power play master. And then he gets called up and he plays 8 minutes on the fourth line. And then, inevitably they get sent down, and you talk to them. They're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with that? Like, how am I supposed to play with a guy like me and have that amount of minutes and expect to have success at that level? It always kind of made me wonder how those guys were going to make it, because it's difficult to go and take those top six jobs. Everyone's pretty solid up there, obviously. And it's difficult for a guy like that. And Nick Robertson might find himself kind of in that group as time wears on. It's becoming more apparent.
At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And also don't forget to visit the LeafsNation.com. Special teams, a big story from the 6-2 victory. The PK 4 for 4 and the power play, Rosie. They finally scored not once, but twice. I know the Tavares one coming in garbage time late in the game, but still 2 for 4. A lot of positives.
Yeah, positive. I really like the kill, man. The kill's been pretty solid for a while now, and that's nice to kill those penalties, man. It means you can play a little bit edgier. It's not so detrimental to the game and to your night when you do take a penalty. You can have confidence that you're going to kill that thing. Killing penalties breeds momentum, frustrates the other team. That's always solid, and obviously that peeper had its struggles. And if it wasn't for last year in the playoffs, I wouldn't have really been too concerned about the 0-9 start, but it's clearly labeled as a problem now. The fact that they got a couple on the board is probably really nice. At least that monkey's off their back. And, I'm not satisfied with it by any stretch yet. I'm sure nobody is. We'd really like to see some consistency and some ability to get a good percentage going after, the 15-game mark. If they can have that solid percentage that shows that they're scoring at a decent clip, I mean, there's no reason this group should not have one of the top power plays in the league, let alone a garbage one that it's been for a while. So problem not solved, but absolutely nice to get on the board and get the monkey off their back.
I thought OEL was good again. Team high 21 minutes. Again, rapidly ascending into a guy who could be Toronto's number one defenseman, taking nothing away from Morgan Rielly. I think this is great news that he has help. Nobody's talking about Rielly. Nobody's talking about Tanev. I think they've looked incredible together. We expected this, and Chris Tanev, for me, has just been a massive addition. He's not a guy we're going to talk about a lot, but then you watch the little intricacies of the game and you're like, wow, like Tanev just brings so many intangibles to the table. So far I've been impressed with him. OEL picks up 2 apples, now running the first power play unit, 2 for 4 in the game. And Timothy Liljegren makes his season debut, 13.55, 2 PIMs, 2 block shots. Really didn't notice him, which is probably a good thing, Rosie.
Yeah, a player like him, I mean, you can't say he had a bad game if you didn't notice him out there. It's different for a D-man like him, and he could move the puck and whatnot. Couple things. The stat sheet's not going to tell you a whole lot. It's the eye test, but you know, is he capable of wowing anyone or blowing the doors off? Not really, but it's tough for them. They're gonna. I don't know if he's the odd man up. Have they made up their mind that he's on his way out? Are they really trying to shop him? What are they willing to let him go for? Do they need to get rid of him strictly to open up the room for these other guys that are going to be coming off IR? Interesting to see, but yeah, it was kind of a whatever. It was what it was. It wasn't terrible, and I don't know if a player like him is really capable of blowing your hair back, just by the position he plays and the style he plays it in. You're really gonna have to look deep for seeing him stand out.
Yeah, the big thing I stressed yesterday was consistency when it came to Liljegren's game, right? Like that's been missing in the equation for quite some time now. He can find it. I think he turns into a full-time NHLer here.
Yeah, he's capable of doing so. The cap issues, log jam, guys coming off IR, hawk and paw there. It's not always perfect, right? Sometimes you find yourself in a spot where you're absolutely capable of playing in the NHL, but circumstance that you find yourself in doesn't really allow it. And I think he's there right now. And if, he'll probably be thought of as trade bait for a while here, unless he does something phenomenal that really solidifies him being in that lineup. And I just don't know if that's there for him.
The following interview is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Get custom ring building delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece Program and an unbeatable pricing policy. Charm Diamond Centers is proudly Canadian owned and operated since 1972 with more than 85 locations across the country through Charm and their sister brands. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Make sure to check out Iron Mike, my life behind the bench, as you bring in today's guest. It is Mike Keenan. What's going on, Mike? Congratulations. How are you?
I'm very well. Yourselves, you guys are probably celebrating today after a big victory last night.
Yeah,
we're feeling good.
Right.
And Mike, we're going to get to that game, but you're never short on opinion. Tell us through the process, what inspired you to write this book?
It began a few years ago, actually, the beginning of my career in 1984. Jay Greenberg was the beat writer in Philadelphia. And one day he said, if you ever write a book, I want to work with you. We move forward now to pre-COVID and then into COVID. And unfortunately, Jay started the project and passed away of all things West Nile disease. Scott Morrison was doing the editing, and I turned to Scott, another Hall of Fame writer. You guys are familiar with Scott, and said, could you write the book? And he said, of course I can. He was, Jay used to work for Scott in the Sun, I believe it was the Sun. And then so we had a pause for about 6 months. It took another year and a half to write it. I was reluctant even to do the project to begin with, but they kept poking the bear. That would be me. And then Scott brought it to life. Great writing. And Mark Messier did a very gracious forward in the book as well.
Nice. So, Mike, when you're doing a project like that, obviously you got to go back throughout. I mean, you've coached for a long time. There's a lot of memories, a lot of stories. Are you picking and choosing what you put in and what you leave out, or is it kind of a no holds barred type of book? What was the mindset during it?
Well, it's an interesting question. If you sit back and try to recall, and it begins as my life as a young boy, everything. We were just at a 33 reunion with the New York Rangers, and Steve Larmer, who played for me in Chicago as well as New York, he started telling this story, and then he turned to me and says, is that in the book? I said, Steve, I forgot all about it. So you can't capture it all, but Scott would try to trigger memories as he would ask different questions about different eras. And I had 5 decades. I coached in 5 decades and had success in all 5. So tough to recall it all, but we try to capture as much as possible without hesitation.
I'm looking forward to reading about 1994. I'm sure you're stopped on the street on a daily basis, especially on Broadway, and asked about 94. Safe to say that was your proudest achievement?
It was certainly at the top of the list to go 80. The full schedule, and win the President's Trophy, and then win the Stanley Cup. I had some other great highlight years, and everyone, maybe you guys are too young to recognize it, but '87 Canada Cup against the Soviet Union was unbelievable experience. '91 Canada Cup, '93 in Munich World Championships. So we had a plethora of successes. University of Toronto, Peterborough Petes, Rochester Americans, KHL Russia, Magnitogorsk, China, Italy. So it's pretty comprehensive in terms of the miles that I covered.
And we've been talking about Austin Matthews getting the C here this year. You mentioned Mark Messier. You've talked about the decades that you've coached in. What do you look for in your experience in leaders, and what makes a really great leader on a hockey team?
Well, I think that I'll just give you some insights on Mark. And I had other great players. I had over 50 Hall of Famers. So, and many of them great leaders as well. But Mark was all inclusive. Everyone in that locker room felt important. He made sure that they did. He was a conduit between the team and myself. He demonstrated his skill set on the ice as well, backed it up. And he was demanding in terms of asking other players to step up. The idea that you have a responsibility, certainly to yourself and your family, but you also have a responsibility to the fellow next to you wearing the same jersey. Because if I don't do the best that I can do every night, then somebody else has got to do some work for me. And the best teams that win the cup are the guys that are totally unselfish. We had no distractions on that team whatsoever. Everyone accepted their role, even when they weren't in the lineup. They were very positive around the team. And Mark, as the leader, made sure that everybody was included in every aspect of our team building, team concept, team play, systems. And they were comfortable with each other. We just had our 30th reunion about 2 weeks ago. You could still see that they really enjoy being with each other. It was incredible.
Talk about Austin Matthews scores his first of the season, coming off 69 last year. Obviously, you talked about your lengthy career in coaching. Anybody close in terms of goal scoring, in your opinion?
Well, obviously, Brett Hull. I mean, he is a pure goal scorer. I had many, we got Gretzky and Mess and Anderson and so on. Even Mike Gardner played for me, and he had 600 plus goals. But the purest probably goal scorer that we could compare Matthews with would be Brett Hull. It was an incredible goal scorer, sniper, shot unbelievable. He could find the seam in the offensive zone. He could read the play and find that opening to get himself in a position to score. So I had some great goal scorers, obviously, and put up big numbers. Jeremy Roenick in Chicago and Steve Larmer, Michel Goulet. You had 50 Hall of Famers to talk about. It's hard to talk about them all, but Brett comes to mind right away.
As your career spanned over, different generations, you coach different types of people, and as things developed and they're raised differently, different generations, did you have trouble adjusting? Did you consciously adjust to the type of guys that were in your locker room as time went on in these generations? And let's be honest, they're softer as time went on. Was that tough for you to adjust to, or?
Not really. I mean, if I hadn't adjusted, we wouldn't have won, but I was able to make some adjustments. And you could ask me if I could have done it better. The principles I lived by throughout my career, but my methodology probably could have been improved. You have to self-examine your own style and be critical of your own development. But I did change enough to make contact or to relate to the different generations as we went on. In 1984, it was a different group, young group, the youngest team in pro sport, very receptive, coachable group. And then in 2014, I'm in a foreign country. I have to learn to speak enough Russian to give command, and we win a championship in Russia. So recently in Italy, and that's a different culture, a different mindset as well. So you have to definitely make some adjustments to your own methodology, style, and or your expectations of those different generations.
Mike, I thought it was only fitting we had you on today. I'm not sure if you caught this from the Leafs Kings game, but Craig Berube called a timeout up 5-2 with 11 minutes left, and he blew up the bench. How many times did you blow up your bench in your career? And what'd you make of the Craig Berube hiring? Do you think he's a good fit here?
I saw that move, and I wasn't surprised. I coached Craig. The Leafs are in good hands with him. I'm hoping that they can learn over the course of the season from him and from his staff what it takes to win and be prepared for playoff hockey. I think that Paul Maurice is a friend and have been in the league for years. He reset the time clock a little bit and found a little bit of old school style of play to win the Stanley Cup. And it's a copycat league, and I think that other teams will follow suit. But he also had people like Taychuk who learned from his father, a different generation, and they inserted that into their program. But that didn't surprise me. The immediacy of the moment, he wanted to prevent a slide, or it's a soft landing. We got such a big lead. Here we go. We're just going to coast in, and it doesn't happen that way. You've got to play hard for 60 minutes, and he was delivering that message at that point, and it was a good timeout for the Maple Leafs. They responded and won the game in good style, but that's part of the teachable moments you go through. You learn from an experienced coach like Craig, and a guy that can demand that kind of respect because he played the game honestly, hard, and had a tough role. So hopefully they'll continue to respond to his leadership.
Yeah, speaking of those Leafs, I mean, their fan base are one of the more tormented in sports, very passionate, and just haven't been able to get over that hill for decades now. What do you think it's going to take for a team in Toronto to get over that hump and win a Stanley Cup?
Well, I think it's a learning curve that they're going to have to put in place. You're going to have setbacks over the course of an 82 game schedule, but it's not what happens to you. It's how you react to what happens to you. How are you going to get better and be prepared to play playoff hockey? And also, there's a lot of noise, as there was in New York from the media, in Toronto particularly. You guys know that. They have to learn to deal with that. That's part of the responsibility of having that Maple Leaf jersey on, and that should be something that they embrace, that they enjoy, and they carry it with pride, because there's super big support system there for them, and a critical system when they don't do well. So they have to learn to manage that and manage it well. And I think with the guidance of their coach and their coaching staff, Brendan Shanahan, I played for me as well, and the type of player he was hard nosed, terrifically talented, and a goal scorer, but very hard nosed. And the Maple Leafs have to learn that to get deeper into the playoffs than they've had recently, and to have the expectations, set the bar high right now. This is what we're going to do to improve and be ready for playoffs, to win the Stanley Cup, not just to play in the playoffs, but to win the Stanley Cup.
Can you pull back the curtain? You just mentioned Brendan Shanahan. Can you pull back the curtain on what he's like behind the scenes? Because I think that's one of the things in Leafs Nation we really don't hear from him very often.
No, and he's been a quiet leader in that regard. He's letting his staff step out in front, but he certainly influenced the dressing room when he was playing. He was a competitor. He's a fierce competitor, and with skill, talent, size, and toughness, mental toughness, physical toughness, and people from Leaf.
I think we may have lost him here. Yeah. We'll try to get Mike back to wrap. If not, many thanks to him for dropping by the show. But yeah, it's always interesting when it comes to Brendan Shanahan, right? We don't hear from the guy very often. Mike, you back with us? Oh no, now we can't hear you.
Brendan?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, he's there.
Did you hear my answer on Brendan?
We did, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Mike, sorry about that, and thank you for connecting once again. Full disclosure, I'm Italian. My parents are from the South. What was it like to coach the Italian men's national team? How much pasta did you eat?
It was a pleasure, actually. It was segmented, a different style of coaching when you're in charge of the national program. And I signed up to coach the team through the Olympics, and I had open heart surgery last April and had to step back, but I'm an advisor. Um, they're they surprised me a little bit in the fact I was up north in the Dolomites in Bolzano, where many players have gone through, but the number of hockey rinks in that particular region, it's the richest region in the entire country. And all the children, boys and girls, are playing hockey or skiing or doing both. And they have the facilities. They've invested the money into building in every small village community. There's a hockey rink. So that's speaks well for the future of hockey in Italy. And the players were very coachable. They were very receptive to coaching. They're passionate, not as skilled or at the level of an NHL team, but they improve and will continue to improve as their program expands.
Mike, I can't thank you enough for dropping by. Once again, congratulations on the memoir. Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Mike.
Anytime. That is Iron Mike Keenan, an absolute legend in the hockey world, and so gracious of him spending some time with us. Go out and get the book. That was really fun, Rosie. That was a lot of fun to get sort of his perspective on the Maple Leafs and also everything he's been through in his life and his career.
Yeah, what stood out, like when he's talking about Shanny and what it takes to win and to play, like Shanny's a good example. He was one of my favorite players growing up, and like Wendell Clark, for example. Here's guys that can make a career in the NHL. They can make money in the NHL. They can play in the NHL for a long time, and maybe they can put up enough points and stuff to be a Hall of Famer in the NHL. Like that's great, but they still chose to absolutely play their bag off, to lay it all on the line, to sacrifice their body, to do scary things, to go after guys, to play tough, to stick up for teammates, to block that shot, to hit that guy, to run into that brawl. Like they did that on their own accord. And I'm always fascinated by that. And I love it when a guy that is still going to be in the league if he didn't do that decides to still do it. It's so impressive to me. And those players are few and far between nowadays. And I'm not saying Mitch Marner needs to go start line brawls and all the rest of it, but to play with a bit of a bag of knuckles and to play with some balls and to play like a man and to have pride in your team and your jersey and yourself and to respect everything enough to go into those situations. I would love to see the Leafs have a little bit more of that. And it's gotten heads and shoulders better than it was in the past. They used to get run out of building. They used to have no self-respect. They used to not stick up for each other. It was bloody embarrassing watching a lot of time. They've totally fixed that in a lot of ways. But I mean, again, when you look at the teams that win the Stanley Cup, they go to war. And I would love for some of that Craig Berube, mentality to rub off on these guys and for them to have a little bit of spine and to go to battle a little bit more and have a little bit edgier of an attitude out there, I think would serve them well, especially in the playoffs.
It's the hate to lose mentality. And it's interesting you bring that up because last night, following the action on the ice in the NHL, I managed to check out the 6th and final episode of the Amazon Prime series. And it pretty much focused on the Florida Panthers and them going through the grueling grind of that 7-game series up 3-0. And the more and more I watch Matthew Tkachuk, man, like that is leadership personified. Like Mike brought it up in the interview there, just Tkachuk, what he means to that franchise. But that guy just hates to lose. Like we talked about this last year. It's okay to be pissed off. Like that's the one thing that's been missing with this team the last couple of years. They lose like, okay, we'll get them next year. Like, yeah, it sucks, but let's go golfing next week. I know guys are going to golf at some point in time, but it's okay. We'll get them next time. For some of these guys, it's unacceptable. Like Nathan McKinnon, do you not think that guy's miserable today? They've dropped 4 in a row to start the year. They cannot get a save for the life of them from their goaltender. I guarantee you Nathan McKinnon is miserable today.
Yeah, it's the competitive spirit, right? And how that manifests itself into your play is kind of different for everybody, but yeah, it's tough for these guys in Toronto because if they show that and if they show frustration or whatever, it's just going to ignite even more of a firestorm through the media and the questions. So they try to really deflect, that those feelings and that attitude that they show. So I could see why that may contribute to that a little bit, but yeah, that just furiousness to lose and the competitive spirit. And you talked about, the Prime documentary. I look at the F1 drivers too. I mean, there's only 20 of them in the entire world, and they're so bloody competitive that just losing isn't an option. And they want to win so bad, and you absolutely want those guys on your team. I'm not saying the Leafs aren't those guys by any stretch, but yeah, when you would like to see some more emotion, some more vigor, and some more competitive spirit, and just having it, like, you just want to follow a team that absolutely hates to lose as much as the fans hate to watch it. And it always bothers me when people do say, "Man, I'm more upset than they were at the end of the game." I don't buy that for a second. I just don't think they show it as much. But yeah, that should shine through, that absolute hatred to lose and to be beaten by another team or another player. You want that in spades on your team.
As a Leafs fan growing up, the guy etched in my mind, Darcy Tucker, man. That guy
Oh,
hated to lose, and he would drag his team through the fight, and he hated the opposition. It was a different era, man. You watch him every game. Like, he tried to hit you so hard, like your soul came out of you, honestly.
I when I like the Rock'em Sock'ems that showcased him, and like when he's slamming doors and he's like shaking, and I was just like, "Oh my god, is that ever awesome?" Like, that's fun. That's when you're in it. I mean, that's when everything outside of the rink goes away and there is only one thing, and it's what happens inside of that glass. And he's the one that kind of triggered that for me. I love to play intensely. I love to just be absolutely soaked in sweat and swearing and slamming and bleeding, and it was just the greatest thing in the world. And he did that probably as good as anybody else, man. I loved watching that guy and have nothing but respect for guys that play like that. And again, you don't have to be, touched by God to play that way. You don't have to be, not everyone can be Austin Matthews. It's just not humanly possible, but everyone can play to a level of intensity. And I mean, I think that any team, if everyone upped their intensity level, it would only benefit you. And it's free to do. It just takes a bit of balls. And I hope that Craig Berube can instill a little bit of that in these boys too. Like, we're starting to make we're army crawling in that direction, man. It's a good time to be a Leafs fan, if you ask me.
It sure is. At the Leafs Nation 401, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Many thanks to Tammy for the super chat for Nick and Rosie's swear jar. Wow.
Thanks, Tammy. Now we can go off a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's a very nice donation, Tammy. So thank you so much for that. It's time for the Great Clips Inbox Question of the Week. With more than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada, Great Clips is the world's largest hair salon brand and official hair salon of the NHL. Salons are locally owned and operated and open 7 days a week. Your time is valuable. Use the Great Clips check-in app. See the wait time. Check in on your phone and get your haircut when you want. Another super chat, courtesy our guy Leaf Nation 67, who has been the Leafs' best pickup thus far, Rosie.
Well, there's a couple to pick from, man. OEL, considering people didn't like the signing, he's stood out in a very positive way. I think as time goes on, you're going to see Tanev kind of be that guy and really be a guy that can hold this team together when things are getting tough. You could also look at, I don't want to take your taking everybody, but I mean, Stoli, you got your goalie. This could be a nightmare start, and we're 0 and whatever, 3-1 or whatever. And it's just like, good Lord, because Wool goes down. But no, they went and got Anthony Stolars, and I don't remember us being as confident in the goaltending in a long time, and our quote unquote backups in there. So there's a couple pickups that have just gone fantastically, and really none of them have been have any reason to believe that they've been mistakes so far. Sorry for taking everyone. What do you think?
It's fine. Everyone's pulled their weight. I'm going to go with Chris Tanev. I just love the stability he brings to the blue line. Nobody's talking about Morgan Riley. It's like they're in a rocking chair, that pairing. It's been a really, really good start for the Maple Leafs. 6 goals surrendered in the first 4 games of the season. For more information, check out greatclips.com. Great Clips. It's going to be great, Rosie.
Yes, it usually is when you get a nice haircut.
I'm due for one. I got a wedding on Saturday. I'm going to hit up Great Clips tomorrow, actually.
Hey, there you go, buddy. A wedding,
Did I just wear
wingding.
a hat to the wedding or what?
I was gonna say, is that hat permanent now after a couple of tough chat comments? I think you're all right, buddy. There's a lot of guys in worse shape.
I'm gonna start wearing a toque. No, actually, honestly, I feel pretty good about my hair in general. It's one thing you can't stop. I did tell my parents I might go to Turkey next summer though.
Is that the hair transplant spot?
No, I just like Istanbul, man. I've always
Okay.
wanted to go.
Right. Well,
Possibility of that.
whatever you do, we support Nikolai.
Yeah, I'm gonna shave my head. No, we tried that last spring. It's okay. I will cope just fine. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. One bet I do like tonight, an 11-game slate in the NHL. I like the over between Tampa and Vegas. I'm not sure who's going to win that game. I think Vegas is going to respond to a degree after losing to Washington the other night. I think Tampa is due for a loss, and I'm expecting some offense. I know you hate when I go back to the well of like what's happened in the past, but the past 4 meetings between Vegas and Tampa have been very turbulent all over, so I'm hitting it again tonight.
Hey, there you go. It's tough to know what's going to happen, but what's intriguing on that docket is Oilers versus Predators. Both teams who have, super high expectations and a lot of people talking about them throughout the offseason, and not off to a good start at all. So we'll see who can take that one down. I just love going to the three ways, man, and getting the plus money and
Yeah.
just saying someone's going to get it done in regulation. And I don't know, with Soros not doing too well, and they finally got the monkey off their back in Edmonton. I'm looking at the Edmonton Oilers money line plus 115. I think they're going to take down the Preds in regulation.
6-hole writes in Turkey, they transplant your hair to your head from your testicles.
Hey, we'll call you old pubis head. That'll be all right.
That'll go a long way getting us some subs and likes on this podcast, because that's what's missing, quite frankly, in the first 2 weeks of season 3, Rosie.
You having your pubes on your head? Yeah, that's been
No.
missing for
It's
sure.
more the correlation between the home crowd in Toronto, who, by the way, by multiple accounts who were in the building, decided to call it a night with the Leafs up 5-0 after 2 last night. Half the building was full for the third period, apparently.
Reminds me of my dad. He's an impatient man who doesn't deal with traffic very well. And if we'd go to a Flames game or go to anything in general, I mean, it can be a barn burner, clearly headed to overtime unless some, fantastic things happen in the third. And he'll put his hands on his lap and say, well, we better beat the crowd, and would just be
Oh.
gone. And I remember, I don't know what game it was, but we were in the truck still sitting in traffic, and just a historic finish to a phenomenal game, one of the games of the year. And we were sitting there, I'm looking at him, I'm like, why do we even go to things if we're just gonna leave before we find out? But sounds like everyone in Toronto had that same feeling, even though it was a bit of a blowout last night. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man, what needs to change in that barn. If they could hang some acoustic rattling things up in the rafters, I don't know, that would probably screw up concerts. I don't know. It's a problem though. There's nothing that you can feed off more than just a crowd that is just vibrating the building. It's the greatest thing ever. And if you care about these Maple Leafs, man, it's important to have that at your home rink and in the playoffs. And Toronto just doesn't have it right now, and they haven't had it for a long time.
Yeah, I got some flack on Twitter for bringing it up. And some guy called me a bozo. It's like, yeah, well, it concerns me when a team is putting on this kind of effort. They're up 5-2, 5-0 in the third period. And it sounded like you're at a viewing for a funeral. Like that's often the ambiance, like for a Leafs game in general on home ice. It sounds like when you go to a funeral, everybody's quiet. They're just looking at the bodies, saying their prayers. Like that's just the feel I get when I hear that arena.
It can be loud, man. I've been in it when it is
You've witnessed it, yeah.
absolutely vibrating. And I remember Pony looking over at me, Ponikarovsky, and going, "This is the loudest I've ever seen this building." I don't even know what the circumstances were, but it's certainly capable of having. And I mean, the suits all get blamed, but I mean, if you just don't even put anyone in the platinum seats, everyone else, yeah, it's still expensive. But I mean, there's a lot of passionate fans going to the game and wearing the jerseys. You can see it. It's just, I don't know. It's frustrating that it doesn't. People say it's just the building, or it doesn't translate to TV, but there's more to it than that, man. I would just love to see that building a little louder. Bottom line.
Fair enough. That's it for us. Again, if you want to catch us on Twitter, by the way, at the Golden Muzzy for me, Rosie's at J_D_Rosehill. So make sure to check him out. You've really come a long way on Twitter, Rosie.
I was just thinking about our first show and how you were laughing at how clunky he was.
You used to have a segment, Rosie Tweets. Remember that?
Yeah, I know we did. I had some weird ones. No, I'm getting used to it a little bit more, and you get the gist of the following and who's doing what, and it's kind of fun sometimes. I don't always do it, but sometimes I just feel like ripping off some tweets, and then sometimes I go a little silly with it. But it's fun. It's all part of the fun. It gets you connected to the Leafs Nation. Hashtag LeafsForever.
I always love when you get gooned up and it'll be like 2 a.m. Eastern time and something will just come to your mind. You'll be like, yeah, I'm going to tweet it. And it gets absolutely no reaction because everybody in the Eastern time zone is sleeping. If you could just schedule that tweet, you could schedule tweets though.
No, I didn't. No clue. What do you just hold down the plus button or what?
I don't know. There's a whole thing around it. You can schedule a tweet so you can channel what you have to say at 2 a.m. and put it out there at like 10 a.m. It's perfect.
Well, there's a lot of times good things come to my head and I tweet it out. And yeah, I'm like, oh, everyone that follows me has been asleep for 3 hours, but life goes on.
It's okay. Work in progress, just like this podcast. Many thanks to Iron Mike Keenan for dropping by today's show. Should mention coming up tomorrow, Craig Simpson of Hockey Night in Canada, who obviously does a lot of color analyst work. With Chris Cuthbert covering this Leafs team will drop by. We're going to tee up Leafs Rangers. That should be a really good one on Saturday night, Rosie.
Yeah, big test for the Leafs. They haven't really had a big ticket team come into their barn or vice versa. And it's going to be a big test against these Maple Leafs. And they've had enough time to kind of figure out where they are a little bit. And let's see how they match up at this point in the season. Not end all be all by any stretch, but it'll be a good test.
At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. As per usual, thanks to producer Vic. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga. We'll talk Friday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.